Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon where you are in the world. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us for Take Your Calendar Back, which is really a bit of my story, some tips and tricks on how I broke out of my own personal meeting prison. And so I introduce myself. I'm Jana Lass. I'm the VP of Marketing here at CloudApp. And joining me is Megan Fabry, who is our head of content here at CloudApp as well, helping me kind of moderate as we're going through. A few housekeeping items that I want to go through before we get started, and then we can really dive into the meat of everything is, yes, we are recording this webinar. You should see that as you're virtual walking in, and we'll be sending that out to everybody who is registered along with the slides. So if you want to rewatch it, share it with a friend or colleague, you'll be able to do that. We will also have time for questions at the end. So if you would like to ask some questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A panel, and Megan will help me address those either throughout the webinar or at the end. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk through a little bit about the agenda of what we're going to talk through today, because I'm a huge fan of agendas for any meeting or webinar that you are attending. I'll talk a little bit about my backstory and kind of how I got to where I was with my personal meeting prison, and talk about what is this growing meeting problem that has probably brought a lot of you here today, and what my personal aha moment was that things needed to change, and what I started to do in order to change that and kind of break free of that, as well as the top 3 areas that I am able to kind of bust meetings, along with my async meeting tips and tricks on how to make those work for me. And then we will wrap up with a Q&A. So hope that sounds good for everybody. Before we dive in, I actually want to ask you all a question first, and that is, want to launch a little bit of a poll here and find out how many hours a week on average do you spend in meetings, because there was obviously something that brought you here today. And so let's get that started. And so tell me, how many hours a week? Is it between 1 and 10 hours? Is it between 11 and 20 hours? 21 to 30 hours, or like me, where you got 31 plus hours? And if you are attending this and from CloudApp, I would say please do not answer, because we all know that we have a culture of less meetings. So I'd like to hear from everybody else in the room. We'll give that just a minute. I probably could have had some like Jeopardy music.
Yeah.
Here to like get it going for everybody. Let's see where everybody stands.
Coming in. Very interesting, guys. This is cool.
Give it another 10 or 15 seconds. All right, and we're going to close it out in 3, 2, and 1. We'll share the results here. And so it looks like we've got actually a lot of people who don't spend less than half their work week in meetings, but some, like myself, who spend a lot of time in meetings, so over 31 hours a week. So an interesting mix of folks here for our poll, for sure. For me, I was definitely in what I thought was the extreme category of spending over 30 hours a week in meetings every week at one point, and a little bit more on kind of my origin story and how I got there, although you should really consider it more of a cautionary tale. I worked at a number of different tech companies in leadership roles for the past 10 plus years. This includes big companies and small companies, a lot of different stages of growth and variety of industries, everything from Marketo and Martech, Sumo Logic and DevOps, Cloudinary in media optimization. So there's a lot of different industries, but there was a commonality behind all of them. And that was what exists in a lot of startups, which is being raised on that hustle culture, right? Everybody wants to be in the room where it happens. You want to be advancing in your career, making an impact, looking at all of those busy executives and thinking, man, they're important. They're making calls. They're totally in control. They get to make the decisions. And young me thought, that's going to be me one day. It's going to be so awesome. And as I grew in my career, it really became more of a be careful what you wish for, because the more I grew, the more senior I got, the more meetings I was involved in, the more everybody wants your opinions, the more everybody wants you to be there just to hear their opinions. And really, it got to a point where I became just completely consumed by the meetings in my calendar. And that was kind of my meeting monster, my meeting prison. Is really, I was spending 32 hours or more per week consistently in meetings. This wasn't just scheduled meetings, but a lot of ad hoc meetings that you kind of get pulled into or put on your calendar at any particular moment for the day. You know, hey, we need to have a 15-minute huddle on this, which isn't really a huddle, kind of things. And it is just overwhelming at certain points, because you start to feel less accomplished, and all the reasons you wanted to grow in your career, making more impact, being more helpful to others, you're starting to feel less accomplished and really unsure about the value that you're bringing to some of these meetings. So many times I would just question, like, why am I here? There were meetings that just could have been an email. I was getting double and triple booked. People don't even look at your calendar before they add those meetings to your calendar a lot of times. And I was just really frustrated about not feeling productive and not getting as much work done during my work hours because I had so many meetings. So then I started to take my to-do lists home with me, stay late. And it was not just a post-pandemic problem or a pandemic problem. This had been going on for years across all of these different organizations. And it was starting to affect my relationships as well. I remember at one point in my career, I had a demand gen manager on my team who we used to get lunch served, common at startups, right? And they would have to like make me a plate. I begged them to make me a plate so I could like shove food in my face while I was going from meeting to meeting, instead of actually being able to just like sit down and enjoy the company of other people at lunch. I also had a very snarky, wonderful marketing assistant who said, who do I need to fight to get some time with you this week after multiple cancels of one-on-ones because I had to make room for other meetings? And that doesn't feel good to your team either. It's, you know, really affects your relationship with them. They start to feel not important, or you're on the one-on-ones and you're like multitasking, not giving them your full attention. It was really crappy of me as a manager to be doing that, but that's how I felt like I had to at that time manage my time. I even had a family member come visit and took a look at my calendar and ask me, when do you actually get time to do your work, you know, much less take breaks and stuff like that. And really it just leads to and compounds that feeling of burnout, where I felt like my work week was completely out of control and I wasn't feeling fulfilled, didn't have good relationships. And I just knew that like I couldn't be the only person that this was happening to. And turns out there's a lot of research out there, and it wasn't just a me problem. As you guys probably know from wanting to attend this webinar, is there's lots of research and stats. And on average, which looks like this group has a pretty good handle on the number of meetings that they're currently spending in their week, but professionals generally average around 21.5 hours a week in meetings. And that can range anywhere around 25 meetings per week, some of them being those kind of quick huddles and stand-ups. But the average number of meetings since 2020, post-pandemic, has actually been increasing. It used to be 15 per week. Now it's that 25. So it's up pretty significantly there. And over 45% of employees say they feel overwhelmed by the number of meetings that they have to attend, according to a research study that Zippa did. And unfortunately, back to the origin story, is when you start to move up into management and senior leadership, more meetings tend to come with that territory. So professionals in those types of roles tend to have an average of 39.3 meetings a week and spend over 30 hours a week in meetings, which was exactly what I had been experiencing there. But it's kind of a dichotomy, because when you then polled those same senior leaders, 71% of them from one survey felt like most of the meetings that they attended or scheduled were unproductive and inefficient anyway. So we're kind of feeding into that problem of, we're scheduling meetings because we're more senior, but even those that are scheduling meetings don't feel like they're productive. And really, when you look at it, it's, missed opportunities for deep thinking, missing opportunities to bring the team closer together, because everybody's kind of annoyed they have to be in these meetings that they don't feel are productive or useful. And ultimately, it's also costly for the business. It's estimated that $37 billion is lost in productivity based on just unproductive meetings alone. This is time people could actually be doing things that are more impactful to the business. And every employee on average spends around 31 hours on unproductive meetings a month. So that's almost a full work week every week on unproductive meetings across. So, you think about it, it's not just me problem. It's a bigger issue than that. And really, I think it has a lot to do with some culture and cultural issues. And I absolutely fed into that problem, because I was somebody that was raised on that culture of like, if you're important, you need to be in the room where it happens. And that's not really the case. For me, my aha moment came when I had a day of back-to-back meetings that had started at 7 a.m. my time, was not going to get done until 5 p.m. and had zero time in between. You were rushing late from one meeting to another, and it is not a glamorous feeling, but I had to stop a board advisor in the middle of our one-on-one discussion and ask for a bathroom break. I did not want to be that person that took their laptop to the bathroom with them. And I really just at that moment thought to myself, first, that person was very generous and kind of laughed it off and said they also felt that same way. But it really kind of made me think about, like, is this what my workday has become? I'm really not taking care of myself. This is not me at my best. The company is not getting me at my best. And how do I really start to change and be the change I wanted to see? And we all knew it needed to change. So what did I need to do that? So first, it came with setting better boundaries. I don't know if anybody else has this issue, but boundaries is a huge area where we tend to, especially with those of us that work from home, but even this was an issue I had before, is, oh, yep, I can do that. Let me move this around. Let me make room for this. And really, it just comes down to being more present and aware of setting boundaries and sticking to them. And so that was kind of the first thing I started to do, is I set my meeting hours. And if there were meetings that were double and triple booked, I was saying no to those. Someone who works here at CloudApp once said, no is a full sentence. Thank you, Angela, for that nugget. And it is something that I've really taken to heart since that aha moment, is that it's okay to say no to meetings or decline meetings, suggest maybe that one is not needed or that an update can be provided in a better way. And I became a lot more vocal about those needs to my team, to my upper management. Sometimes it's cultural and you can only control the things you can control. So I reevaluated my own calendar and said, what are the meetings that I have scheduled that really are not needed to be a meeting, that can be done a different way? And then blocking off focus time. This was another really big one for me, is, one, if people schedule over focus time, saying no to that, but making that block for focus time makes people also respect your time a lot more. So that was a huge game changer for me is starting these things. But really the thing that had the most impact for me was replacing certain types of meetings with asynchronous updates instead of having them be synchronous meetings. And when I found out about visual async, it felt like I had been living under a rock forever. And my work life really was forever changed, because that is the biggest thing that helped me take control of my calendar in conjunction with those setting boundaries. It made me feel more productive. It helped me start rebuilding those relationships with my team members and really enjoying a much better work-life balance than I had ever had before. And it seems like such a big task, but when you go about it gradual and over time, I was really shocked at how easy it was to make small changes throughout my work week that really helped. Right. And so I went from that 32 hours a week to now, and this is a screenshot from my calendar currently, that is, I currently only spend around 11 hours on average, like some of you here, in meetings per week. And I really feel like most of those meetings are truly necessary, important, and productive. And really, it helped me get back more than half of my work week for that deep thinking, that strategic work, those connections that I had really been missing once my life got out of control. Take a quick drink here. All right, so great. There's the origin story, how I got to where I got to. But really what everybody wants to know is, what are the places and meetings that you can really have the most impact? You know, how do you do that is usually the biggest question I get. And so the first area that I kind of have busted meetings in my life is those status meetings and stand-ups. And I had, prior to joining CloudApp, I had actually started doing status updates as emails. It's a lot to read through, but it was my first area of kind of getting rid of a meeting, and where visual async actually kind of evolved that a lot more. But everybody kind of knows that status meetings can suck quite a bit. They're big productivity killers. They're very disruptive to people's workflows. They're not always relevant to everybody who's attending. So that's a huge area. Right. Then there's like design feedback and project reviews, and my favorite, which is operational troubleshooting. Right. And usually when you have a lot of people in the room talking about these kinds of meetings or holding these kind of meetings, is, you know, again, it's not always relevant for everybody who is attending. Few people who, there's usually like a group of people that talk way too much and go into way too much detail. So people start tuning out. Then there's the people who barely say anything at all. I'm betting most people are usually multitasking, doing something else, answering emails. So really not paying attention. Sometimes you get, my favorite is that question person, that there's like one person in the room that doesn't get it, and you're having to go back and forth with them. And it really feels like not useful for everybody else's time in the room. So you could take it offline, kind of thing. Or you're doing the scheduling musical chairs. Scheduling musical chairs is basically when you've got multiple people, probably cross-functional, and you're trying to find that one time slot that everybody can attend. And so you'll find what looks like a free slot, and it's like, oh, but George can't attend. Okay, let's look at a different. And so sometimes you end up pushing out a meeting that you're trying to schedule for a while, just to find that one slot where actually everybody can have join, you know. And it's just such a pain, especially if you're globally distributed across time zones. You know, you've got one person in the UK and they need to stay until like 7 or 8 at night to be able to attend with everybody else. It is really just a big pain in the butt. And my thinking is that a lot of meetings are usually scheduled because of a lack of structure or overall organizational communication that isn't happening. And we try and make up for it or overcompensate with meetings, but really that's not the answer, because you're feeding into the problem, right? So how do I address these? And what do I do with them to make them work for me? So first, how do I approach those stand-ups and status meetings now? Like I mentioned, I used to take those and make them email updates. And that helped eliminate a lot of those status meetings, but it's a lot of writing for the team. So now I've made them, replace them with async video updates. But the key to having a successful async video update, especially if it's replacing your stand-up, is to really make sure that you give the team some structure. So for my team, it's a structure that I kind of been using for a long time, is this red, yellow, green tracker where you put things in kind of categories, and it helps them stay on track and keep their updates really relevant to like the most critical things, like what are your blockers, what are some action items if there are any, what are some wins that you have, how are things progressing, and making sure that you're giving a time limit for those updates so that you're not getting like a 25-minute stand-up update from one person. So you generally want to keep them under 5 minutes or less. And when they make that video, it's really nice to have like a too long didn't read 1 or 2 bullet point summary when they post that video, either within like a Slack channel that you might have, team channel, or via email, if that's how you use it, or Teams, or whatever it might be. And that really, I think, has helped make those efficient. But, these don't replace, the higher quality meetings that you want to have. So I still have weekly team meetings, but rather than spend a lot of time on those status updates, we usually do like a quick 5-minute roundtable, maybe update or win that you want to share, focus on more personal, connections and building, finding out what people enjoy, what they did for their weekend, that kind of stuff. And then the bulk of the meeting can be spent on either like bigger learning and development things that we want to talk about, brainstorming, maybe we're going to workshop some ideas, make it a bit more interactive, Q&A, maybe even a team building exercise or something there. So that's really what I do with my team meetings. And then super, super important, and this is something that came from an operating system called EOS, but I think it's really relevant to all synchronous meetings that you have, is always rate your synchronous meetings. Make sure everyone is finding them useful and productive, and hopefully you have a culture of transparency where your teams are able to share that with you and be honest about how they're feeling about those meetings. So I'm going to kind of call Meg out at one point. She actually told me, hey, I don't feel like this particular kind of meeting is useful for me, and it was actually one of our stand-ups, because it turns out our weekly meeting, our one-on-one, and our stand-ups were scheduled kind of 2 consecutively. So we were able to space those out. But like if we hadn't been rating and getting that kind of feedback both on async and synchronous meetings, that wouldn't have come out. So you really want to be rating your synchronous meetings, even your async meetings, and making sure that those are useful for your team as well. And then this one has been huge for me, but the creation and consumption flexibility of asynchronous meetings really have, rarely is there like an immediate action item that needs to come out of them. Often when I'm kind of like looking through those, is I can take notes that I can follow up in like a one-on-one or person or deal with a little bit later. But I like to like put a reminder on the calendar. And what I think what's great for the team is everybody works a little bit differently. So I put a reminder on the calendar that, hey, send your async update by XYZ time, whether you want to create it the night before, at that moment, whatever it might be. It's just kind of the deadline of, hey, try and get it to me by this date. But they can make their updates whenever they want, whether they're working at midnight or 5 a.m., over their cup of coffee, over their lunch, whatever it might be. And I like to consume the updates either in the mornings or the evenings while I'm walking my dogs. And it allows me to kind of like focus and relax and actually really give my attention to kind of what's been going on. This is one of my favorite things about them, is you can watch them in 2x speed or listen to them in 2x speed. So like really kind of processing, or you can slow them down if there's something that you like really need to think about or process a little bit more, the ability to rewatch them and go back to them later. And everybody has a different way that they learn best. So being able to go back to something, see it again, hear it again, is a really great way yeah, you can treat them like podcasts, or, and it's a really great way to get those updates. And then if there is something that you do need to see or hear or go back to, it makes it really easy. And another thing I love is sometimes you think, is my manager, and I know I had this in one-on-ones at different points in my time, is, are they even listening to me? And a friend shared with me at one point in their one-on-ones with their manager that the time was scheduled, but they really felt like their manager just kind of sat there and went, and didn't listen or hear anything that they had to say, wasn't reading their updates. My team can see that I'm watching their stand-up videos. I make comments, I can give them thumbs up, reactions. When I watch it, they get a notification. So like they know that I'm engaged, which also makes them feel good about that. So that's kind of how, like stand-ups and status updates have really, and for me, that was, I used to do 3 of these a week, and now we just do 1 async in the middle of the week, and that really works for us. All right, the next type is design feedback and project reviews. This one for me was really big, especially when it came to web design or creative design, the ability to walk through concepts without having to schedule a lot of meetings. And this is, something that is just really, when I think about, most of this is internal, but this particularly is really relevant when it comes to a lot of agency work, is one, being able to communicate with your agencies, like a lot of clarity. And again, that musical scheduling, that musical chairs of scheduling, avoiding that, and really like adding annotated screenshots. Hey, I want this here. This was, this screenshot here is actually, me talking to my web agency about some navigational changes that I wanted to make. And instead of just saying, hey, I want to move this up here and to the right, like I could show them exactly how I kind of wanted it with a hacky, annotated screenshot that made it really easy to turn that around, instead of having to have like some design meeting and have your like account manager on it, which is just like a waste of time for a lot of people, which is how I've had to do it in the past, right? And it really, again, that stopping that scheduling tag and internal and external. I've also found that when it comes to external meetings, a lot of times people are on the meeting just because they have that FOMO. So the ability to share these kind of things eliminates that FOMO feeling, because you can always kind of just share it with whoever you might need to share it with that wasn't able to attend, maybe didn't really need to attend, but wanted to feel like they had the update so they weren't missing out. So it makes it like a really great way. Or if I've had points where like they bring on a new designer or developer and you have to go through like the whole process again, just share that video update with them. And it's a really great way to kind of avoid that kind of feeling like you're having to go through the whole process again and again. And again, that creation and consumption flexibility is your agency in a different time zone. You can easily share it, again, watching and listening to it again is a huge one. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a design meeting and something that was said was interpreted in a different way. And if you could go back and actually watch it and be like, oh yeah, that's actually what they were talking about. I wrote that down wrong, or I misremembered it, or whatever it might be. That is huge for, project reviews and design feedback, and again, that ability to kind of slow things down or speed things up however you need. Everybody processes information differently, so this makes it a lot more flexible and easier for everybody to kind of come to a similar understanding. And then we have what is possibly my favorite of all time way to use async meetings, and that is with operational troubleshooting. And just huge shout out to any of my operational people that are on here, is ops, whether it's marketing ops, sales ops, DevOps, even IT, really the unsung heroes of all organizations. I have a lot of experience in marketing operations, and just about anybody who has ever had to deal with any kind of technology data flows that are not working as expected knows the pain of having to go through troubleshooting and like playing whose stack is the error anyway. is, for me, it was like, hey, it's this marketing automation system, it's this CRM. No, it's not syncing because of yours. No, it's not syncing yours. And, you're trying to get together and then everybody gets together. Oh, you didn't troubleshoot this enough, oh, who's, well, can I see what you saw? Walk me through. And then you're getting into all of these like firefighting SWAT team huddles. And really what async updates can do is verify and recreate, right? Is you are able to go into the system, show, hey, this is what's happening here. This is what the error is. Here I'm showing you the information is not there, right? Super support. This is also really important for support people as well. But you're able to like verify and recreate those issues, point them out to them clearly with like an annotated screenshot or the video walkthrough of what you're seeing. And it's able to minimize those SWAT huddles and that firefighting you're doing, because everybody is able to hit like full transparency into what everybody else is doing. And this for me would have been such a game changer early on. I cannot tell you how much we would get into a room and then everybody would just have to like go through their troubleshooting together. Oh, it's not me. This person's sharing the screen. Oh, it's you. Oh, I think this is where the sync is broke. Oh, there it is. And then like, it just really adds a confirmation to that whole review process that everybody is doing their due diligence. It's all clear and transparent. And you're really able to do things like highlight log files of what's happening. And you have that kind of visual library of past issues too. So once you're past and you fix the issue, which you can then also verify that the issue is created, expected behavior is now being provided, right? Is you can then add that to a ticket, an incident log for your incident management, maybe even do a postmortem where you're pulling people's videos together and explaining it. And that way, if the issue ever happens again, you're able to just like reference back, oh, this is what it was. That was a common issue. So if there's turnover, people change, tribal knowledge is lost, you can go back to that library and get a lot of that historical context on what happened with the issue and, be able to see it, have that better review across teams. This is a great one to share with management as well. If it was like a high priority issue that people want to understand what was broken, what happened, how did we fix it? It's a great way to give that kind of depth and context to your operational troubleshooting. So those are, I would say, my three biggest ways that I've really reduced a lot of the meetings that I've previously had in my life, replaced them with async in a way that's a lot more effective and efficient, giving me a lot of flexibility to kind of take back my control. But I also wanted to give you a fourth, which is, I've just discovered this with joining the CloudApp team, was using async for recruiting. If anybody has been a hiring manager or recruiters where you feel like you're taking that 15-minute phone call and saying the same thing over and over, this is me, this is my background, this is the team, this is what the role are you still interested? That is definitely a way that I am exploring using async videos and has been a huge time saver on a role that I already have. But it was something that I learned from our CEO, Scott Smith, who used not necessarily in that way, but to better throughout the candidate experience, sent me a lot of async videos himself, check-ins after each step of the interview process. It was a lot easier than trying to schedule those quick calls, grab a few moments, feedback, next steps, that kind of stuff. And again, it just like made me feel a lot closer to the team and more excited than just getting an email to see that video, to feel more connected to these people that I had actually never met in person. So it made for a really great candidate experience as well. And I'm now actually testing having my candidates send a 15-minute introduction video or answer a few questions back to me as a part of my product marketing role that I'm sourcing now. So that's one of the ways that I am addressing my async needs. And sorry, going a little bit over, but we have a few minutes for a couple of questions.
Yay. Okay, guys, keep them coming in the Q&A section. To start off though, Jana, I've got one here. You were talking about culture and how you had your aha moment in sort of not the greatest meeting culture. So I'm wondering, this person's wondering, it can be overwhelming to be the first person to make a change in a work culture. So do you have any tips and tricks for sort of, starting an async mindset and an async practice and getting other team members on board at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say first is know that it's not going to happen overnight and you need to choose your battles. And you, again, is for me, it was probably a close to a 1-year journey. And that 1-year journey started with boundaries and saying no. And then like small things like introducing, okay, instead of stand-ups, we're going to do these weekly status reports, kind of stuff like that. So it's very small. And when it is cultural, you need to focus on choosing your battles and the things you can control. And the things you can control are generally the meetings that you set, which generally was one of the key problems, but also is sometimes it just takes somebody, like maybe you're not going to be a part of the team stand up because you have a doctor's appointment or something like that. You can seed changing that culture by doing things of introducing people to this kind of concept, like, oh, I'm not going to be there tomorrow, but hey, I've sent you guys this little update so that you don't miss out on, whatever it is that needs to be. And that kind of seeding is what starts to change the thinking of people higher in the organization as well. But know that you can only control what you can control. And you're not, if you've got, a leadership team that thinks that we need to be in the room because important people are in the room, just focus on the things that you can control and make those changes in your life. And maybe that change might want to be start looking at a different organization, but again, that's something that you can control.
Such the rebel, Jana. Okay, this is great. Another one that just came in is it's kind of poking at how our team works with sync and asynchronous meetings. The question is, how frequently do you suggest your team gives you updates? And how frequently does your team have the space to ask questions outside of that meeting time? So I think if you can break down, how do you work sync and async on a weekly basis with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I am not an advocate of 100% async. I know there are people that are out there like that, but one of the beautiful things about async is it's very adaptable to different personality types. And I think a lot of times our role as managers and leaders should be that we try and be more flexible to the different kinds of personalities and roles that we have on our own teams. So I do have some kind of like set guidelines of, I have a weekly synchronous meeting because I like that, kind of relationship building, development, everything like that. Then I have a midweek async update where we go into that red, yellow, green tracker. And then the beauty of it is because I've reduced so many meetings in my life, it allows me to have a much more open door to some personalities like Meg will want to Slack me and we'll have like a quick conversation or something like that that might be going on. Maybe we both work late at night sometimes. So we'll kind of have conversations then where other, members of the team like to do those asynchronous updates a lot more frequently. So, they really take time and say, okay, here's this report. I'm sending you this report proactively. So I let, outside of like my guidelines, I try and let the person dictate, but I might provide suggestions if there's a time where I feel like it didn't need to be a meeting or a huddle. It could have been an async update. And I think I'm still figuring out my personal balance of when I like, because it's just preference, when I like to have something async versus synchronous.
Yeah, I actually like syncing up with Jana kind of randomly to follow up with things because I need the emotional context a lot. So I think it really does depend on the person.
Yeah, I will say one of the probably big challenges with me, and I'm which I've found async video updates to be really important for, is I'm a very direct communicator. And in Slack, you don't necessarily get the tone of my voice. So if I can ask more questions on like an async video, people can hear my tone of voice and that it's like curious and not like, very direct and aggressive. So that's one of the things I like about you. You mentioned that context as well.
One other one, just kind of around productivity, but do you block your calendar and batch tasks? How do you kind of address deep work?
Deep work. So that is, for me, that's blocking that focus time.
Mhm.
And what I will try and do is block certain times for a specific focus. So, it might have been like, hey, building this webinar deck was going to be a block of focus time for me for kind of like creative tasks. And I do batch tasks in a way that I like to put similar tasks. So like if I've got creative tasks, I kind of like to get into my creative brain and look at those together. But if it's like analyzing metrics, I like to kind of block and focus those together. And I try and break up my focus time. But we have Focus Fridays, which has been amazing for sure, where I can kind of batch multiple things together.
And then Greg, I love you, Greg. He's asking what tools we use.
Well,
so I think this is a good time, Jana.
This is a great time. So I obviously use CloudApp, which was kind of my introduction to the visual async part of that, even though I started doing a bit of async before joining CloudApp. So with CloudApp, versus trying to either use like multiple native tools or one tool for this and one tool for that, I get the video recording and screen sharing. I also have the screenshots, the ability to annotate those, create GIFs if you want to do that. And we've actually done audio files and like sharing PDFs as well. So that's been for design feedback. I actually didn't even talk about PDFs, but like the ability to like mock up PDFs and send those back and forth in the design process, just using CloudApp versus like, okay, now I need to like go into Photoshop or this or that or whatever it might be. So I use CloudApp for a lot of things. Depending upon your async style, there might be, different aspects of that that are really good. We also use Slack internally. That's, we've got an integration there. That's actually where my team can see when I'm watching their videos. Yep. They can see that there. They get notifications. I get notifications when they watch mine. That's another one, is knowing people are paying attention. If I send out an update, I know who's watched that update and who's gotten the instructions. And I know who I can follow up with if they didn't get those instructions. So it's obviously a great tool. That's kind of one of the reasons I'm here. And it's actually one of the reasons I was so excited about joining the company after I met Scott a while back.
Yeah. And another thing, because Greg, you brought this up, we do share. So when you create a CloudApp video screen recording, whatever it is, whatever type of file, it automatically uploads and creates a shareable link. I can't tell you the amount of clicks and mental effort that saves me, because it automatically copies to my clipboard and then I can paste it in Slack and whatever async channel I'm using. So, and this addresses another question, which is externally. So when you're using an async tool like CloudApp, any visual communication, and you want to talk to people outside your organization, how are you doing that, Jana?
Yes. So this is actually a great one. I absolutely have done this outside of our organization. So I talked a lot about internal things, but externally with customers. So this is one of our really big use cases for our customer success side, is scheduling like QBRs or meetings. And it's really hard to do that sometimes, especially with senior leadership that maybe you want to get in front of, whatever it might be. So sending an async like QBR video, if you're not able to connect with a customer, is a really great way to do that. Adding things to support tickets, giving that ability there to communicate with them, walk them through things, adding it to your documentation is another great way to do that. On the external side, when I first joined CloudApp, one of the things I actually asked for is I get tons of sales emails, LinkedIn messages every day. I probably get hundreds a week. And as somebody who has managed SDR teams and sales teams, I am empathetic to that need, but you can't take all of those calls. So kind of what I said is, hey, salespeople who want to sell me, I am open to this, but I don't want to read through your emails. If you send me a quick demo and I'm interested, I will absolutely schedule both a call with you and I'll give you feedback on your pitch from my perspective. And so that was another way, not necessarily customers, but vendors who wanted to sell to me, that I said, hey, do this. And I'm actually in several conversations with a couple of people who did that, of tools that I had not been familiar about before. So that was a great way to engage with me as a prospect.
Yeah. And to go off of that a bit, I think what Async does for me when I'm working both internally and externally is I have to get my mental ducks in a row. I have to organize my thought for that person. And then I ask them to do the same for me, whether it's through a video or even just an explanatory email. But by not just saying, okay, we'll jump on a call, it's like, no, organize your thoughts, give it to me in a way that I can digest it in my own time. And I can then really understand the ask and come back with I think a stronger, more thought out answer. It's less of this frenetic, like, oh, I got to answer right away, and more like, okay, I'm going to think through this. And it's really helpful, especially with people outside the organization, because you are coming to them with well thought out like questions or asks, and they're coming back. Let's see.
Oh. So, Greg, very, very specific and glorious question.
I know.
Inviting your customers. So we do have an SDK and it's not a client that you download, but a screen recorder that you can leverage to have customers like record a video for you, show things to you. We have a number of integrations that kind of use a similar feature to that web recorder, so that customers can record their videos and send them to you without having to like download a client. And after this webinar, it's actually getcloudapp.com/recorder, and we'll send out that link so that you can check it out. There is a time limit on it at this point, as we should have, but obviously it's something that's really easy for them to do, and a huge IT use case and support use case.
Yep. Awesome. I love it.
All right. Yes, we are way over time. I just want to thank everybody so much for joining us. Thank you, Meg, for running through the questions. And I'll just kind of close with this. We'll send this out. If you want to talk more about it, please feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn, or I'll shoot out my email to everybody as well. Happy to talk through this more. I have tons more examples, and like as I'm kind of going through this, happy to share kind of my learnings, things that work for me, things that don't as well. So thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.